Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about UV mapping, and I've got a little demonstration here about how to think about UV mapping. Then we're going to take it, we're going to take the pillow that we had and we're going to UV map that, and we're going to find a quick texture and just put the texture on and we should be done. So this is the example that I've got here, and you can think of this box and what's going to happen next to how UV mapping is. So we take a 3D object, and the object of this is to flatten it out so the object becomes a 2D object. This is as flat as a flat thing can be and that's generally the idea you want to go for when you are UVing. You want to take that 3D object, flatten it out, and then we can take this into Photoshop or some editing program with 2D and just basically paint on our textures, and then we can take the UVs back into the 3D program and apply them, and then they will all apply to the 3D object and you will have something like this. Now you can imagine this being textures. Now some objects come with default UVs, such as primitives. They will generally all come with UVs. The UVs are generally standard and they're not very helpful because each surface shares the same UV space. For example, if I create a new texture and stick on a surface checkerboard and put this to 10 by 10, just put 10 there, and if I stick this on, you'll see that it looks perfectly fine, right? All sides are perfectly even in terms of the square. If we render this out, you can see it's very clear and it's pretty nice. However, if we change this and put on a picture, I'll just go to my desktop wallpapers and stick on a picture and click no, you can see that each polygon actually shares the same texture, which is not what you want, because if you've got something that has a repeating texture, then it looks really bad. Sometimes you might get away with this. Most times out of 10 you can probably get away with this method on perhaps text. If you just put in like a metal texture on some text, you can get away with it. However, when you're doing more complicated textures, different types of objects such as an iPod and stuff like that, you're gonna have to go into more detail to map on the logos and stuff like that, instead of just having the texture plastered all over the actual the model. So I hope you understood that. So let's move on. So this is the object we're going to be unwrapping today. Just a pillow. We created this in our last episode, so you can check out that if you don't know how to create this. And what I've done is I've added a line down the center of this polygon where we actually put on the seams, so it pulls it in. I've added a line here because this is where the seam's going to be. Now it's always good to plan out where you are going to have the seams in your model. For us, we're going to use this line here. If I just use UL and highlight this line, the line all the way around is going to be our UV seam. Now, if you use different programs such as ZBrush, you can get away with hiding seams because of the way the program allows you to paint on the 3D model. It's really helpful. However, when you're just using traditional 3D such as Cinema 4D, Maya or 3ds Max, anything like that, then you're going to want to hide the seams as best as possible where people are going to see them. However, for this project, we already know the seam is here, and it's like this in real life. A pillow does have two sides, a top and a bottom, and you basically put these together and you have a seam going down the middle. Now you could make this a little bit more intricate by just perhaps, let's actually do it in this episode, why not? So what we're going to do is we're going to use the bevel tool, and we're just going to bevel this out just ever so slightly. We're going to add one subdivision, and then we're going to use UL, and we're going to select that middle edge, and then all we're going to do is go to the top view, go to the scale tool, and just ever so slightly scale this in, just like this. And then what that's going to leave us with is, once we finish off, I'm going to use UL again. I'm going to select the top and the bottom. I'm going to zoom in and I'm just going to bevel that edge again because I want this to be very sharp. So just a slight bevel there. I'm going to turn off the subdivision and that looks okay. So now what will happen if we add and hypernerves to this, you will see that we're going to get a seam here, which looks like the two cushions basically pulled together or sewn together. Now it might be a little bit too big, so you can actually just scale that down, but we're going to leave it like that for now. If we actually just take a look at this from somewhat of a distance away, you see it looks pretty decent, and it kind of looks like these two have been sewn together, which of course is the look we want to go for. So now that we've got this, we're going to want to basically use the seam in the middle here. It's very hard to see, but if we just zoom out, this line in the center here will be the seam, and because it's kind of pulled in to this crevice, we're not going to be seeing it, which is also good. So I'm not going to be using Cinema 4D to UV map this tool, to UV map this object, simply because it's just a waste of time. Cinema 4D has some of the worst tools for UV mapping. They are very long and hard to use, and you will soon learn that UV mapping is very tedious, boring and time consuming. So the faster you can pump out the UVs in a very decent manner, then the better off your life will be. Especially if you're doing something like you're being a texture artist, you will love having good UVs, but they do take a while to create. So using a program that enhances that, the fastness of it, is something that you should want to use, and you should learn to use it. So the one I'm going to be using is called Headus UV Layout. It's spelled H-E-A-D-U-S, as in head-us, and it's UV Layout. So let's type that into Google. You can download the free trial, which will allow you to do everything I'm about to do, except to pack and to render out the UV. But you can also render out the UVs in here by just going up to here, the user layout, and turning it to BP UV edit, and you can actually render out a wireframe of this UVs. But for us, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, Export, Wavefront, because we want to basically take this object here into, so I need to select my object first and then do that. So File, Export, Wavefront, and put it on the desktop as pillow, and there we go. I'm just going to save that, save it as default, so scale 1 in centimeters, that's fine. I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to bring up Headus UV Layout. So it's a very, very simple program to use. When you get the free trial, you will get display. I think you might get edit as well, but you don't get these like optimize, pack, snap and stack, etc. You don't get any of these objects. You do get the load, save, temps, display, and you do get to cut and flatten out, which is the most important part of this program. The other stuff that I'm going to be using later on at the end are kind of irrelevant, because you can do that in Cinema 4D or any other 3D application. But what we're going to be using today, you get it in the free trial, and you can just uninstall a free trial and reinstall it, and you can just use it forever basically. So, but I do recommend buying it if you're going to be using this, because it's a fantastic program. So I'm going to hit load. I'm going to go to directory. I'm going to find my desktop, because that's where I've saved the file, and it will give me all the .obj files on my desktop, which we saved pillow. So I'm going to make the load options. Type is polygon, the UVs are new, weld UVs is checked, and clean is checked. That's just going to make sure our UVs are really clean, so we don't get any errors, because the program does have a few bugs that can crash. That's why we have temp files here, which I'll talk about in a second. So click the pillow and just click load, and it'll bring up another screen. So this is our workstation, pretty much. It's a very simple tool. So one thing to note is you have temp files here. You've got 1 through 5, and then you've got E. So 1 through 5 will basically just save this stage of the project on your desktop. So if I press 1, if we go to the desktop, you can see it there. It's just loaded that, and it's basically a save point. So you can actually just save the position you are at, which is right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to display, and I'll talk about these. You don't really need to worry about anything. The only one you need to worry about is the view. We've got UV, which we don't have any UVs yet. We have edit, which is where we cut our seams, and then we've got 3D, which is basically the 3D view of our final object, so how the UVs are actually looking. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to edit, and to move around the viewport, to rotate like this, it's just the left mouse button. You don't have to use Alt, Control, or anything like that, just left mouse button and you can rotate around. Middle mouse button will allow you to grab the object and just move it around like so. And the middle mouse button scroll in and out, or right mouse button held in and out, or up and down, left and right, whichever, it will also do the same zooming in and out action. So the way we need to use this tool is you've got a few options. You're going to be using shortcut keys on your keyboard. So the cursor is very important because it determines what's going to happen. So point your cursor over a line that you want to cut and press C on your keyboard and it'll cut a line. Now you've got two different colours here. You've got a red and a yellow. The red represents a semi-permanent cut. This means if you try delete this yellow line, it won't get rid of the red line because that's a semi-permanent cut. The yellow line is kind of a reference guide. It's like saying, do you want me to go on this line? And it goes up to a certain amount of edges and then it will stop because it doesn't want to go too far because it's not short if you want it to go that direction. So it's trying to be smart and it does a good job most of the time. So if I wanted to actually just cut a square out here, and if I pressed C here, you'll see we'll get a line up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically make the square here. Right, so we've got our cut, but we've got these unnecessary yellow lines that we don't want. So just hover over these and press W. Now if pressing W will get rid of the yellow line. If you just want to get rid of individual lines, just hover over that individual line and press the backspace on your keyboard, not delete, the backspace which is above the enter key, and you can get rid of individual lines. But I'm going to get rid of all of these lines, and it's the same with the red ones. You can use W to get rid of them, or you can use the backspace key. It's entirely up to you. So I'm going to hit W, get rid of these, and that is fine. So let's start cutting our object. So we want to zoom in and we want to hover over this and press C. Now that's going to cut a line for us. Pretty nice. It ain't gone all the way, so let's go in and press C again. Zoom out, so it's stopped there. And we're just doing the same thing. You might have to go a few times depending on the curvature of the object. As you can see, it gets really curvy here, so it's not sure where to go. So you just need to help it out by zooming in and using the C key to cut around here. Now, once you get familiar with this program, it will be 10 times faster than what you're watching now. You can zoom through these so fast. So I'm just going to do this and just go all the way across, and again use that. And this one looks a little bit tricky, so let's zoom in, make sure we get these. There we go. And the top one here as well, and just scroll around and zoom out a little bit. So that's going pretty far down, which is good. So we're going to continue this round, and it is as simple as this. It is simple as cutting your edges and where you want the seams. It is very fast and very simple. And the thing that makes this program so fantastic is the way it flattens the object, which is something that we want. So I'm just looking around here and it looks like this is all cut. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover over this. Now you've got two options. You can use S on your keyboard to split. I like to use the enter key. So hover over one of them and press the enter key and it'll force it apart. And the reason I use this method is because I know that both of these are actually separated. However, if you use this method and it doesn't separate, it means you don't have a full complete cut around your object. So we've got two options here. I'm going to hover over this with my cursor and press D on my keyboard. That's going to drop that geometry into my UV. So I'm going to go over to the UV, and this is where our UVs are. Now the tools are still the same, so middle mouse button to zoom in and out, or pan, or you can use the left mouse button not to rotate but to select your UVs. So this is where the tool becomes really powerful, and you can't do this fast in most other applications. You can definitely not do this in Cinema 4D. It doesn't have anything like pelt mapping. 3ds Max is a really good program to UV. If I didn't have access to this tool, then I would use 3ds Max because it's perfect. But let's continue. So I'm going to hover over this. I'm going to press F on my keyboard, and you can see it tries to smooth it out. Now the green represents good, so there's no stretching here. The red represents stretching. So we can see in these corners that we've got some really bad red marks here, which is overlapping, and we've got some lighter red rather, which is a little bit of stretching. So if we go to the 3D view, you can see it's represented here. So if we press T on our keyboard to toggle the textures, we can see the top here looks perfect. It looks really, really nice. When we go into the edges, however, it starts to get a little bit wonky, a little bit stretching, and we can fix that quite easily. So go into our UVs, and we can do it in this view, or we can do it in the edit view. Because we've already flattened this out and we've got some overlapping UVs, we're going to do it in the edit view. So hover over this object, hold shift and press D, and that'll drop it back into the edit view. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in here, and we're just going to actually cut out this edge here. So I'm going to press C, and it's going to cut these edges for us. Now you want to make sure you get them all. However, as you can see, it's actually gone down this route, which we don't want. So just hover over it and press W. That is absolutely fine. So again, I'm going to go to the top. I'm going to find the corner, and I'm going to press C. I'm going to press C here again, and then press W to get rid of that one. So we know it's cutting down this route, which is fine. Same thing here. And it is as simple as just cutting lines into the texture. Now you can see this one didn't actually bridge off, which is fine. It's all determined on the position of the polygons. So as you can see here, it will, because it's more leaned towards this angle rather than this angle. And just make sure you get all of these points. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold enter again over this, and it's going to split these apart. So I'm going to hover over this and press D again, go into the UV, and then I'm going to press F, and now you can see that our object doesn't have any of them overlapping edges, which is fantastic. There is another method to unfold this, which is the one I prefer. Hold shift and press F, and it will do a really, really intensive unfolding, which is nice because it gives us that ability to have this going for a number of minutes. So it's going to go for a minute. You've got a timer here, and it's just going to flatten out this as much as possible. So as you can see, there's a little bit of a kink here in the line. They're not 100% straight. So it's trying to straighten these out as best as possible, but keeping the actual shape of our pillow. So I'm going to hit enter, not enter, excuse me, spacebar, and that will drop the tool. And there we go. So to move this around, hold the spacebar down and click with your middle mouse button, and you can move this around. Okay, and if you want to rotate this, hold your spacebar button down and just left click, and you will be able to rotate. And to scale this, it's spacebar and right click, although I don't suggest scaling your object. So we're going to go back into the edit view. I'm just going to quickly do the same with this. So one there. I'm not going to talk through this because we already know how to do it. It is as simple as just throwing a cut in here, a cut there, and just getting rid of the lines we don't want. So let's scroll around here, and again put these on, which is fine. Scroll around, scroll out, scroll in, and there we go. So I'm going to press enter again. And actually, I'm going to Control Z that. I'm going to press S. Now S won't work. It's Shift S, which will split all these for you, which is fine. So remember, it's Shift S to slice these, and Enter also does it, but it moves them apart, which is nice as well. So I'm going to hover over this and press D, and I'm going to go to the UV mode and use the same. So Shift F, and that's going to unfold it for us. And there we go. So I'm going to leave it to go for a few seconds just to let it straighten out as much as possible. Okay, looks pretty good. Got a few red areas here, which is okay. It's not going to be noticeable, to be honest. Hit my spacebar, which will drop the tool from flattening it out. And then I'm going to go over here to split pane, and I'm going to go into this one here with my cursor, and I can press number 1 or 2 or 3, or you can just click if you want. I'm going to go to the 3D view because I want these textures to be the right way up. So we know this one here is a little bit off center, so I'm going to hold the space bar down and left click and just rotate this round. And is that the right direction? That doesn't seem to be the right direction, so let's do it this way, and that is the right direction. So I'm just going to basically try and straighten this up as best as possible. And I think we don't want it, obviously, spend too much time on it, but we do want it as close as possible. And as you can see, everything looks pretty damn sexy. And that is pretty much our UVs. So what you would do now is you would go to save, and you would save it under something, over the same object, or something else. I'm just going to put 1 and hit save. So save is done. I'm going to hit dismiss, and what I'm going to do now is that's where you would finish. You would go into Cinema 4D and render out the texture for yourself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the pack, and I'm going to make this a 2K texture, and I'm going to pack this object. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the render. I'm going to change this to a 2K map, and I'm going to name this pillow text, and I'm going to turn on AA lines, and that's going to render out basically a UV map, so we can take it to Photoshop and actually texture this. So there it is. So I'm just going to go to File, Save As, and just make sure it's actually here. Pillow text.tiff, that's fine, so I'll dismiss that. And because we've done a 2K map and we've actually rendered out the well, we've basically packed it, what I need to do is I need to go to save again and save it over this one that we've just done, and just make sure it's saved by clicking it twice and just hit dismiss. Then what we can do is we can close this down, and we can close this down and click exit. All we can do now is go into Photoshop. Let's just load Photoshop up. And we're going to take that texture into Photoshop, and we're going to go from there. So I could end the tutorial here, but I really want to show you guys how you would just texture this quite quickly. Of course, you would spend more time on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my users and open up the pillow text that we saved out and just zoom in. You can see it's a 2K map. It's quite big. That is pretty awesome. So I'm going to go File, Open. And what I want to do is I want to find a texture. So just to save face, I'm actually just going to use a wallpaper that I've got. Which one should we use? We'll use, I don't know, my wallpaper suck, but we'll use this wallpaper. And I'm just going to copy this and bring it over here. Zoom out with Control minus, and I'm just going to put this somewhere like this. I'm going to duplicate the background. I'm going to move it above our texture and just put it to multiply. That's going to get rid of the white and just leave the black lines, so we can actually see what's going to be positioned on this area. So I'm going to just position this something like that, I think. I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to move this up here, and instead of having the house as the focal point, I'm probably going to have the other side like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out what we don't need on this side. So I'm just going to zoom in, because as you can see it's overlapping at the top. So I'm just going to go in slightly here and just delete out this section and press Ctrl D to deselect, and that's fine. It doesn't matter about all this stuff, all on, you know, the other sides and stuff, because that's not going to be shown up. Just the stuff covering the lines is going to be shown up. So if we're happy with that, we can bring these together. Ctrl J, Ctrl Shift U to saturate these, and Ctrl L to bring some levels, and just bring these in just to give it a little bit of a bump. And we're going to use that as our bump map. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, Desktop. I'm going to put this to a JPEG and just put this as diffuse. And I'm going to bring on the bump map and do the same thing. File, Save As, Desktop, JPEG, and just put this as bump and save that. So what we need to do now is go back to Cinema 4D, and I'm going to go to File, Merge Objects, and bring in our pillow one, which is our updated UVs. Keep it as that and click OK. Now I'm going to move this one just slightly over. I'm going to bring the original one slightly over again. And I'm going to make a new texture, and I'm going to go to the color and find our diffuse map, which is here. I'm going to go into the bump map once I turn off specular and find our bump. I'm going to bring this just to about 10. That'll do. Now, one thing we forgot actually, which is quite annoying, I forgot to turn off this. So I've got a file, save as, and just override the ones that we had. So remember to turn that off. Like, again, did the wrong one. File, save as, JPEG, desktop, diffuse, just save over that. And then turn on the bump again, file, save as, JPEG, desktop, bump. There we go, fixed it. And then we're going to go back to Cinema 4D, and we're just going to go into this object and just hit reload, and it'll get rid of the lines. Same with the diffuse, go in, just hit reload, and there we go. So now that we've got that, if we drag this on both of these, you can see one is not so UV'd. However, the other one is UV'd, and it is really as simple as that. You have your object. Let's just throw in some lights here just to give it a little bit of sexiness, but this isn't really a lighting tutorial, it's about UVing. And bring this up like so, and we can turn on the shadows to area. We can stick down a nice old plane and just put this under like so, and we can just render these out, and you can see that the difference that we get is really noticeable. We've got a really nice textured pillar here, and it still doesn't look good because we can actually just put these into some hypernerves, and you'll see the difference now, how crisp and clean these both look in comparison. So this one is really bad, and this wouldn't do at all. However, this one over here looks fantastic, and it looks really nice. If we zoom in a little bit, I'm just going to turn off the hypernerves in the viewport just because it really does slow my viewport down. But I'm going to zoom in like this, and I want to get both of these in the shot, and then I'm just going to render this out. And for some reason, I don't know what it is about Cinema 4D, but when I don't have any subdivisions in the editor, it doesn't show up in the renderer. So let me just put these back on. I think that might be a bug, or maybe it's a glitch with Camtasia. Probably is, because it doesn't do that when I'm not recording. But anyways, so we zoomed in, and you can see that the detail is pretty nice, and that's because we're using a 2K map. If we used a lower resolution map, it wouldn't be as nice. It'd be a lot more blurry in the textures. But overall, I think this is really nice. I think we did really well, and it is really as simple as that. It really is. We can go from this angle and render this out, and it looks pretty damn good. You can't really see the seams, which is good. It looks very flat on top, which is also good. Now, we've done all that work, so what was the point in doing all the UV mapping? Well, very simply put, we get more control over how our texture is put across, rather than just using the default UVs. Now, you could go into the UVs of the default cube here, which is what we had, and change it from UV mapping to cubic, and you might get some different results. And you can go through these and just change them, and depending on which one you use, you will get different results. The best one probably to use is probably cubic, but again, that's not really working for us. So as you can see, no matter which one we use, we're still not getting that look that we wanted. This one looks perfect. That's because it's frontal, which means depending on where the camera is facing, you will just get a perfect texture. As you can see, you can see some white here, and that's because of the UV, well, at least the diffuse image we're using. It's basically isolating the white space that we didn't want to use. On this one, we're only using the UV texture space. So that's why we're getting a perfect result. And the cubic one is okay for most stuff. As you can see here, it looks pretty good. It is repeating, however, but you know, if you're going for something really fast and dirty, then you probably could get away with this, depending on what it is. However, if you do want to add the detail, then of course UV mapping is the way to go, and it is so very simple, as you saw. Now I'm not sure how long this video was. Let's actually have a look. It's 30 minutes long, Jesus Christ, but I'm sure that when you actually do it yourself, you will do it in, you know, probably two to 5 minutes, especially something like this. The reason this video is so long is because it's a tutorial going through step by step, teaching you guys what to do and the tools that you need to use in order to do this. So guys, I hope this helped you out. Sorry that it's about 30 minutes long, but I hope the length of the video is worth it and you learned something from this. So I will catch you guys in the next episode, and if you like the video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace.